During the European leg of Metallica's Damage Incorporated tour in Sweden, the band was traveling in an uncomfortable tour bus with bunks bolted to the sides and cardboard over the large glass windows. Two of the members, Kirk Hammett, the lead guitarist, and Cliff Burton, the bass player, had a friendly dispute, drawing cards to determine which of the better bunks they would sleep in. Cliff won, pulling the ace of spades, pointing to Kirk saying, "I want your bunk," with Kirk saying, "Fine, take my bunk. I'll sleep up front, it's probably better anyway." Later that morning, between 5 and 6 a.m., Kirk woke to the sound of the bus violently skidding and vibrating before flipping over multiple times. The bus driver had veered off the side of the road, overcorrecting, causing the bus to overturn in an open field next to the road. Frontman and guitar player James Hetfield woke up with hot coffee being poured over him from the coffee machine, realizing the bus was on its side. Everyone ran off the bus in fear of an explosion, not really knowing what happened. Kirk saw the bus driver freaking out and heard everyone screaming except for Cliff. Turning around, Kirk saw Cliff's legs sticking out from underneath the bus, not moving. All the band members sustained no serious injuries except for Cliff, who was ejected through the bus window and pinned underneath the bus. The driver walked over and started pulling on the blanket that was under Cliff. Kirk yelled, "What are you doing?" with James grabbing the driver and saying, "Don't you take that from him." James demanded the driver to tell him what had happened. "Are you drunk?" The driver said he hadn't been drinking and that they hit some black ice on the road. James walked up and down the highway for miles looking for the black ice, telling the driver, "Where is the black ice? I don't see any black ice." Later, when interviewed, James said he wanted to kill the bus driver and end his life right there on the side of the road. A large crane would finally come to lift the bus upright and off Cliff, but tragically, the heavy bus slipped through the chains and landed back on Cliff. Early Saturday morning on September 27, 1986, Cliff Burton died. He was 24 years old. Later, the detective at the scene stated he found no black ice, only skid marks which looked identical to those of when a driver falls asleep. It was also questioned if it was even cold enough to form the ice on the road. The bus driver would testify he had slept during the day, was fully rested, and ultimately found not at fault for the accident. Clifford Lee Burton was born February 10, 1962. Was an American musician who was the bass player of the heavy metal band Metallica until his death in 1986. Cliff first joined the band in 1982 and was on the band's first 3 albums, Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and Master of Puppets. Cliff was cremated and his ashes were scattered at the Maxwell Ranch in California. Shortly after Cliff's death, Metallica auditioned over 50 musicians, choosing Jason Newsted as Metallica's new bass player. The band involved both of Burton's parents in the decision to choose Jason and were present during the announcement. After the band broke the news to Jason, Burton's mother hugged him and said, "You are the one. Please be safe." On October 3rd, 2006, a memorial stone was presented in Sweden near the scene of the fatal crash. The lyrics, "Cannot the kingdom of salvation take me home," are written on Burton's memorial stone from the song "To Live Is to Die," a tribute song the band wrote in memory of Cliff. A museum honoring the legacy of late Cliff Burton was opened on May 14, 2022. Jason Newsted would go on to play with the band until January of 2001. With Jason's departure along with Hetfield's decision to go to rehab for a few months, the band almost broke up. James would rejoin Metallica, and the band would finish recording Saint Anger with Robert Trujillo, becoming Metallica's new bassist in 2003 and still remains the band's bass player today. Metallica, one of the biggest selling acts in American history, formed on October 28, 1981, when drummer Lars placed a newspaper ad that guitar player and singer James responded to. Metallica's music is generally classified by most as heavy metal, and considered to help pioneer the wave of the 1980s thrash metal. Regardless of the genre, there's no denying that they're one of the best and most influential hard rock bands of the 80s and 90s. The group has sold 57 million albums in the US alone, 35 million outside the US, making them one of the most commercially successful heavy metal acts in history. It happens by chance, strange or unfortunate in some way. It's a twist of fate. Had it not been for the twist of fate in 1986 with Cliff pulling that ace of spades, the outcome would likely have been Kirk's death.